Hello everybody, how are we today? This is a great group of people, and I know that you could have made a little bit more noise than that. So, hello, how are we today? Much better, okay, thank you.
It's a library, Sarah.
We're in the basement, they don't know, it's fine. Welcome everybody, my name is Sarah Colley. I am the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Great Falls Public Library, and I love what I get to do. Today we are here for Armchair Traveler, and obviously, but one of the things that we added this year with funding from the Great Falls Public Library Foundation was the ability to cook food for you guys, or provide food for every place that we travel to. So as always, the food we are eating tonight is inspired by where we are going. So where are we going? Sweden. Yeah. We are having Swedish meatballs. If anybody wants the recipe, as always, please let me know. But at the Great Falls Public Library, we're happy to connect people with knowledge and resources, and that can be in a variety of different ways, right? So it's not just books. We're all about talks and education and going outside of our comfort zones in some ways, like, you know, me cooking Swedish meatballs. Or whatever I decide to cook for you guys next. So good luck. Just kidding. Today's speaker, we have Leigh Larson. Leigh is one of our regular presenters here at the Great Falls Public Library. And what is that noise?
And it was an
Earthquake.
You can feel that?
Feel it?
I felt it.
Really?
Yeah.
It was a sharp jolt.
USGS.
Sure can move.
Wow.
Take some.
What a fun group activity. That was great. Okay. Awesome. So, Leigh Larson is...
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, the emergency exit. That's probably a good point. Yeah. Does anybody want to take this thunder from me? Where are the emergency exits? Out the door, to the right and to the right again. That's where the stairs are, and it'll lead you right out to the back alleyway of the library. So in case of emergency, which is not right now, that is how you leave. Please don't take the elevator. Restrooms are also out there, as well as a water fountain, but we also have water in the back for your convenience as well. So, I think that's all the main things, right? Anyway, Leigh Larson, third time's a charm. Leigh is a storyteller and a traveler. She is one of our main speakers here at the library with the Learning with Leigh series as well, which has been a lot of fun. But Leigh has gone in all sorts of different directions around the world. And we are super excited to have her here with us again to teach us about some of the cool things that she did while in Sweden, which is a lot, because she told me a lot about it when she got back. So I'm real excited. Thank you all again for being here. Please join me in welcoming Leigh.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me on a Thursday. And I'm going to take a little trip to Sweden. We are going to cover my 9-day trip to Sweden. I was solo. Most of it was via hostel, train, bus, foot. Not all. We'll even see that I stayed in an indigenous yurt in far north Sweden. We'll get into that. And we'll just talk a lot about that experience because I wasn't in one place the whole time. I started in Stockholm and then went all the way up to the polar Arctic and stopped off at different spots. So hopefully you'll be more exposed. I have a lot of videos today too. They don't have sound. When I was looking at my slides, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like 40 slides. And I was like, okay, but a couple of them are like 5-second videos. So, okay. But my hope today is to inform you about Sweden. Just talk about high level. You get to learn a bit about it. Talk about the food and their cultural experience I had. And then also talk about just some of the kind of more personal stories that I had, because this was a very personal trip. So, why did I go to Sweden? It more just 5 days, 1 hour thing. I don't know what that's for, but that is essentially my trip from Stockholm all the way to the Arctic Circle, which cut it actually down a little below that red line. So, I was there. My last name is Larson, Swedish. We can follow that up my paternal line. We had farmland in Texas. That's where my grandfather and my dad are. But before then, we were in Massachusetts, and before then, Sweden. So, I also went, which is super important, during the Midsummer Festival, the Midnight Sun, and I will talk about what it means to be in an environment where the sun does not set for 25 days. So, where in the world are we going? Here, we're going up here, that little blue thing, that's Sweden, but on the left of it is Norway. We are going pretty far north, and as you see, with it being so far north, a lot of water on its east side. You can't tell from that map because it's a color block. It looks like Minnesota. It is lake on lake on lake on river. It's just timber, forest, and it's beautiful. It makes sense, you know, if you ever get to the Midwest and you're like, oh, this is wow, the Scandinavians came here because it looks exactly like it. But yeah, and they're super isolated, but they also have the natural resources to kind of be isolated. They were historically neutral in world wars for the last 100 or so years. They recently joined NATO because of global conflicts now. We'll talk about that. But really, they were at the top of the world, and everybody else's problems were literally beneath them. So they just got to do their own thing. They're a very insulated country. Again, that daylight impacts farming. So you'll have a good month where the sun does not set, and then you'll have a good month where the sun does not rise. So that affects how you're farming, your vegetation, melting snow patterns, etc. Sweden, we have historical evidence that goes back 12,000 years. But really the cool thing about Sweden currently is it is the oldest continuous running kingdom. I think Denmark, right, might be either right there with them. But they have been a kingdom or a formalized country since 1000 AD. So pretty cool. And real quick, as I show you pictures, a lot of y'all are gonna be like, well, it's so far north, why am I not seeing more ice? Well, that's because if you see Iceland, there's a nice jet stream that pulls all of it kind of down into mainland Europe, and a lot of this gets kind of, I don't want to say like tropical, but it does get warm. So just because you're super far north does not, you also have to have other things playing, like jet stream. So they do have a frozen tundra super up north, but again, if you're looking at my photos, I was like, I thought you were in the Arctic Circle, liar. This is jet stream. But I did want to mention on the note of the jet stream and why that's so important, and it's not related to Sweden, but Iceland here, French Revolution, year, someone give me the year of that real quick, I'm dropping it. Anybody know? 1790. A volcano explodes in Iceland, massive volcano. Jet stream takes all of that sulfuric acid from the volcano, brings it into mainland Europe, even as far down into Egypt, triggers a massive famine. And they say that that volcanic explosion, that all that famine, the cloud, it was like a nuclear winter, and they say played a role in the French Revolution. So, that jet stream.
What was the role?
It suffocated the farming. So if there was like the natural disaster that broke the camel's back. Everyone, the conditions were already dire. They were angry at the monarchs, and the volcano exploded. Choked out their cattle, choked out their crops. And again, it went all the way down into Egypt. So here's Stockholm. Stockholm is an archipelago. But it's made up of something like 10,000 islands. But the main ones that you're on it's the 5-island type city, and you just like go from little island neighborhood district to the next via bridge. All the buildings kind of have this style. Not a ton of, and I say this, all the architecture looks very much the same throughout the entire city. There are no, there it is, 30,000 islands, something like that. But you are surrounded by water. And if you keep going a little bit east, you will hit the Baltic Sea. It's just a little bit more tucked in. But the king has his own island, the King's Garden. And then there's Parliament that has its own island, its own. And then, of course, there were other, like, quote-unquote, islands that may have been more for the wealthy or for the younger, millennial young family type. And then you have So it's kind of cool how it worked itself out, but again, there in Stockholm, there aren't private homes. It's all apartments, all of it, even the wealthy. The wealthy might just own a whole floor, but everyone is living in an apartment. They have these massive parks with deer and fox and like wild animals that run through it on each of the islands. But this idea of having a private home, private yard, private car, that's just not really part of what's going on here in Stockholm. You take buses everywhere, you might have a car. A lot of people do have a car for other reasons. A lot of people, most people, have some sort of second home that's like not in Stockholm. So you live in an apartment, you take the bus everywhere, your kids go to the school, you work there, but they have a ton of holidays. They're also super flexible with their work schedules and things. And a lot of people have a second home on any of the thousands of lakes, rivers, seafront. I mean, if you don't have one, your friend does. Like, it's just kind of, and we'll look at what those homes look like in a second. But pretty much everybody in Sweden, a quarter of Sweden lives in Stockholm. Stockholm is also not far from Denmark and Copenhagen, so a lot of folks will go to Denmark and back and forth there. But this also is the home of ABBA. But that was what was really striking to me, was there's so much water, very little, like everybody's walking everywhere. Like I walked everywhere, I took the train when I needed to go far, but I saw kids, like school groups. Stockholm, actually Sweden is definitely in the top 5, I don't know if it's higher where it is, but safest countries in the world. In fact, it's so safe that I asked a Stockholm police officer, what did he do? Like, why are you here? And I said it respectfully, but I was like, this is wild. I saw mothers leave their babies in strollers outside of coffee shops and restaurants and go in and enjoy a cup with their baby just in a stroller outside because they trust their community. They trust their community, but also culturally, they're not as family child focused as some other countries are, even kind of parts of America, United States, where it's just like not everything is built towards the family. Going to coffee doesn't necessarily have to include children and babies and things, and it's just kind of in their culture. Whereas we build America towards the families. There's just different things that they emphasize. So this was wild. I'm out just bebopping along, and I hear what sounds like ceremony, and I come over here. And like I said, Sweden has been neutral in world wars, but because of the conflict, Russia, which is their neighbor across the Baltic Sea, and then also Gaza and Israel and all things that international relations are pulling into, it forced their hand. And they joined NATO, and the citizens were not happy. The citizens, like I said, they would just rather everyone else do your southern stuff and leave us alone. But again, Sweden's right next door to Russia, and it's an asset. So they needed to make a decision. So Norway, what you're seeing, the actual army or service, is the Norwegians coming to welcome Sweden into NATO, because Norway was already a member of NATO, was coming to welcome Sweden. They were going to go to Finland and Denmark after to reestablish the Scandinavian brotherhood. That whatever happens with NATO, that the Scandinavians are going to have each other's back. So that's what was going on here. And some of y'all, I walk in, and I'm like at the very back of the crowd. I don't know anything that's going on. The ceremony is in some Scandinavian, I don't know if it was in Norse or Sweden, but they're having their own thing. And I just, like, trying to figure out what's going on. I wind up standing next to Norwegian soldier officers that were off to the side. And I'm kind of talking to them. It's like they're relaxed. And I show him my military ID, and he like kind of relaxes, and we make a little joke, like, oh, your uniforms might be more comfortable than Americans. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And he's like, and then he answers in the little. He's like, oh, I'm actually a conscript. And I'm a draft. And I was like, no, I mean, why is Norway here? like, they told me to be here. But he did say that the Norwegian Army has a standing army, but that is volunteer. But every year they conscript 9,000 Norwegians, and these are more for administrative, officer, or even purely ceremonial duties. They do this for 18 to 24 months. Gender neutral, men and women. They'll grab you, it's typically top performers out of college or high performers. The Norwegian military will grab you, have you work for about that length, and then you're back in society. And then it is a different track than if you want to go do combat for the military. Like if you go into this role, it's very much administrative, you know. But if you're like, oh, I want to go and fight and die for my country, well, that's a different military training track. So nobody freak out if you get drafted into the Norwegian 9,000 conscript. You're just going to be at a computer or waving some flags around. But the point of, we had this joke, and then finally I'm like, okay, well, like, what am I watching? He's like, well, you know, you were watching Norway, we're coming to welcome, etc. And I'm like, okay, just like, what, explain it to me like I'm 5. Like, what am I watching? And he's like, American, I think you're watching the ceremonial beginning of World War III. And I was like, Sweden's coming to the fight. Let's go. So I was in Stockholm for a few days before I took the drive train out to Ostersund, meaning west of the Sound, or west of, yeah. It's a lakefront village. I was there for a night. It's kind of like in the same vein of maybe like Kalispell, but it's pretty far, and it's like the last big city, like as you're going up north. So a lot of Swedes will come up here, because again, it is like their far north big city. I found a Texas steakhouse. I had to, that's right now. But this sweater that I'm wearing, I actually got here, and here's the story. I got off the train, put my stuff down at the lodge, or the hostel, and ran down, so I wanted to see this town, and got to the water, and it was super chilly. Like, this is when it got real cold. It wasn't as cold down in Stockholm, but once you started going north, it did. This was, again, mid-June. And found a thrift store, and she had this sweater, and I put it on, and she was like, oh, that, like, you gotta have that sweater, and I was like, I love it, I saw it, and she's like, oh, but I only take cash. I'm like, okay, so there's an ATM, I go, I run to the ATM, and the ATM's closed because it's a banking holiday, and I am like, no, I freak out, and also cold, and all this is going on, and anyway, and so I go back, and I tell her, like, I'm so sorry, I couldn't get cash out, you know, but I am coming back through this town another day, or, you know, on the way back down, maybe hold it for me and I'll buy it for you then. And she's like, okay, and I go back to the water, start walking around, and I'm really, really cold, and also tired, and I just wanted the sweater, because I really liked it, and also I didn't want, like, I don't know, like a souvenir Chinese-made sweatshirt that says Sweden. I wanted something authentic, and this was like a thrift store in far north Sweden, like, let's go. And anyway, I get all bummed, and I look up, and I see this Texas Longhorn steakhouse, and I smile to myself, because my grandfather, we're from Texas, the Longhorns, there's like a whole, I went to UT Austin, and I was like, okay, all right, I'm not good enough then. And again, the whole reason why I'm here is because my other grandfather was Swedish, and I'm like, come on, cold. And as I'm sitting there, I go in for, I think I grab like a Coke or something. I cook at the Texas barbecue place, and I look at my pocket, and I just had the perfect amount of cash, like in Swedish kroner, and it was just like one of those weird, like, I was like, I didn't even know I had this cash. I go back, and I was able to buy the sweater, and as it turns out, it was her mother's that died about a year or two ago, or before, and because of the color, particularly on the fair-skinned Swedish women in her community, she just couldn't sell it. So, cheers for me, Swedish and Cherokee. guess. So this is Slagness. Now we're getting further north. Now we're up in Lapland. I am at a Sami indigenous yurt. This is all reindeer hide, which I am going to pass around, or caribou, whatever you want to call it. Now the Sami are Hungo-Russian descent. They are small frame, small body, fair skinned, with narrower eyes, like you would imagine from the Hungary Russian. No. I'm gonna let you show it again. So this was originally, this whole property is the Sami Indigenous Cultural Center of Lapland. Featured on the Swedish government's website, that's how I found it. Like, how did you do gone rogue? But I knew they were legit. They did all of these different programs, and they did all sorts of like schools and groups and all. But when I got there, because it was the time span of Midsummer, and that is a big holiday for them, they were completely empty. I had the entire property to myself. This yurt sleeps like 20. It was just me. And it was like both eerie but beautiful, and they're reindeer herders. So I just had this whole private property of a bunch of reindeer / caribou, whatever you want to call them, to befriend and explore. And again, it was midnight sun. This was taken probably around 11:15. That's the yurt. A little bar area. Here's another smaller yurt for another group with a couple. So they do this often. And again, in this video, I mean, I could have done this in Minnesota, right? Like, I was looking at it and I was like, and there were even parts on the train that I was like looking out and it could have been Sealy Lake area. You know what I mean? Like, it's just funny. So the reindeer, if you're wondering why they look ugly, they were molting. Swedish reindeer aren't just that way. They were shedding their winter fur to come up. But they just had these, and I asked, I said, can I engage and interact with your caribou reindeer? And she said, yeah, they're non-hostile, but I mean, they're still antlered, so. But they really are, they're about the size of a deer, but they are domesticated like cattle, and they do. The indigenous people, the Sami, S-A-M-I, that's what they do in the summers. They bring them inland, and in the winters they take them down to the coast where it's warmer, and that's the go. So this is where they're inland now, and probably not this herd or this cultural group, but tribal tradition would then migrate them to warmer weathers. But this was, real quick, this was the bull, and I knew, like, it took a few hours. Like the first hour, I just sat there and waited for the bull to get familiar with me. And then afterwards, once I earned his approval, is feeling gratuitous, but once I was okay, then the mamas and the babies, actually the next bull in line was like, you gotta be me. Right? And he came and got some food and was pacified by some grass. So the defense system of reindeer is very low. But I did, and you'll see they have white. We're just putting I mean, I do this for an hour by myself, wouldn't you? Do that. Yeah, it is a little weird that they're still molting. And then this is where they sleep. This is their barn. Here it gets warm. And we're just kind of a little reindeer herd.
Females have antlers too?
Females have antlers as well. And the Sami, much like the Plains Indians of North America, they use every bit of the reindeer. So, we made it to Yakima. No sunset today. That is a scary thing to see. But yeah, we made it to the polar
Sunset in
circle.
over 7 days.
Oh no, greater than 7 days. We're in it now. Hope you don't like night. But it was beautiful. So I get up there. I was told that there was a big Midsummer festival. And it was going to be a big deal and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, great, headed up there. And then my train hit a delay. So when I landed or when I arrived, the town was dead. I gave like almost like their 4th of July. They had their celebrations and then it was quiet. And in fact, I have videos of that. So this guy was like, well, I guess I'll have to take you to your hotel. I didn't have a choice. The whole town was dead. I was like, okay. So this is the train station, this red barn. This is, and now here we're driving through the dead town. Probably roughly 3,000 population. And cute, simple. Again, once you get out of Stockholm, then you start having individual homes again. But when you're in the city, everyone is kind of in that apartment world. Here, some more far north Swedish homes. Very lush, very green, kind of like Montana gets. You get that real bright green. I want to keep going the other way. And here's me taking me out of the city, where I was like, I'm going to keep recording. This is about to be a Dateline episode. And I did. So he takes me like not too far beyond here and was like, all right, well, so there's actually not a road. Your lodging is on the lake. It was like one of those cool floating igloos that's like all window. And he was like, but there's actually not a road, so you're gonna have to carry all your stuff through the woods to the lake. And I was like, are we sure? This is not a Dateline episode. Again, safest country in the world. I don't have a choice. And everything's been fine so far. I don't know if my mom knows that story, so don't tell her. And I was super, and I was like, I was starting to, this actually night, and this was a weird one, because this is actually midsummer. This was June 20th, the summer solstice. And I'm disappointed that I missed this big festival, that I had traveled so far to town. The town was dead, which meant the grocery and food was done, so I didn't have any food either. Thank God at the Sami Cultural Center, I was like, yeah, I'll have 2 extra pieces of toast that morning. I don't know, maybe God knows or something. But I just got there and I was like, so I can't eat, miss the party. I have this dress that I brought for this night. And now I'm just gonna go be alone, literally, at the top of the world. And this is that igloo.
That's awesome.
Floating igloo. And I was like, well, I guess I'll. This is 11:57, and then this was 12:05. So when you think about like, what do you mean midnight sun? What does that mean? Right around midnight, this is how dark it's going to get for the whole time. And then this is your quote sunrise, except it didn't really rise because it never fell below the horizon. So just weird. And here I am. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna wear my dress anyway. I'm gonna take pictures. That's fine. So I did. Took some pictures, took some videos. But Lapland, Lapland is a whole region of Norway, Sweden, and Finland. So Lapland, Sweden, just means a certain area of Lapland that is Swedish. Lapland, Finland, same thing. And then you cross the Lapland boundary, and in a few miles you get the Arctic Circle. And then that's where I was, Arctic Circle. And I told you about that jet stream. Like, I thought it was supposed to be frozen. Oh, wait. I don't know how to do this. I don't want to do this frame by frame.
Just click.
I don't have, it doesn't show on the computer screen.
Oh,
Like, it's not mirroring.
okay. Well, there's an arrow, so if you click anywhere, it should go to the next one. There you
Okay, thank you. Wow, how did you
Tech support.
do that? So, on the way down, that was all the way up, now I'm on the way back down. Now, I'm in Ratvik. Ratvik is in Delarney County. Sauna in the Airbnb.
Sounds like you had that.
Balcony looking out over this massive lake. Now, here's the thing about this particular story, this Airbnb. After being in Stockholm and just the busy city life, then the Östersund, and then getting up to Slagness, and then getting up to Jokkmokk. By the time I was on my way back from Ratvik, I was running on fumes. And a lot of it had to do with the daylight. I could not get a dark room. And it was really starting to mess with me. And it was hitting me really hard on this particular train stretch. And the closer I got to Ratvik, the more tired I was getting. And I just knew, I was like, I had this like, I gotta do this, I gotta just like freaking out because it's just me. There's no one else to make sure that I get off at the right train stop or any of that. I think I almost left my phone on one train side, just like things were starting to go sideways and I was getting scared. And did a quick little prayer and I was like, just get me to the train stop and let me get off. Like, just give me that safely. And so when I got there, I get off, I see how beautiful Ratvik is, which I'll show you in the next slide. And I feel relieved, look down, the Airbnb, hostel, whatever this is, apartment, like 200 feet from the train stop. And then once I get there, it is this incredible apartment. Like, I was just like, and again, this was maybe like $25. So I messaged him and I said, thank you so much for your place. I think this is exactly what I needed. And after I got some sleep, got some dinner, I texted him and I was like, I think I might stay an extra night or two. He was like, that's fine, just put money in the box. But the best part was that this particular apartment, had a bedroom with no windows. And that is actually deliberate in far north Sweden where they have those issues, is that, because it's real, started messing with everything. And so I opened it and I was like, what's this? And he was like, just a bed, a dark room. But here's the town. Here's Ratvik. Ratvik is in Dalarna County. Dalarna County is a very large farm county, lots of lakes. It butts up with Norway, so there's also a lot of commerce that comes back and forth through Dalarna County. And this bridge, this whole town, and what makes this really special is not only is it just like a cute town that happened to work out nicely for me, but during World War II, something like 30 damaged American warplanes needed somewhere to land, a neutral place to land, and they landed in this Dalarna County, Sweden. Something like 1,200 American men literally fell from the sky overnight into Sweden, and these rural Swedish farmers were like, well, let's put them to work. We got fit boys here, let's just get them here. And they did. They built bridges, they built schools, they built church there, like everywhere. And when you walk around the town, it says, this bridge built by the U.S. Army. Or, the American boys of 19, And they were there for a good, something like 3 to 4 months waiting for their planes to be fixed. By that point, that's essentially what they did. These Swedes took them into their homes and then had them build up their city, their infrastructure, while they had them. Took them skiing, introduced them to their daughters. A lot of those American boys brought them Swedish girls. Like, their parents and families of some of these soldiers were sending, like, international mail of Elvis Presley, and, like, just the most random. Here we are in far north Sweden, and they're sitting there and totally into American culture, because what Americans did for them during that time was critical. I mean, it changed their town. Some other cool things. Ratvik is also very Viking. That is a Vestra stone. It was done in like 1890 something. but it commemorates something that happened 500 years ago. And I remember sitting there in front of this stone, just thinking how, like, this stone is even older. How do I say this? The stone is commemorating something Swedish that is older than my own country. Like, and it's hard to wrap my head around how old that culture is. Again, 1,000 years of being a singular political entity. And what's really cool specifically about Matvick, and we'll talk about King Gustav. Viking, like it's a very Viking town. King Gustav, his dad, King Gustav, obviously. When King Gustav V was a teenage boy with all the other royal boys of the Swedish court, they were out hunting one day, and they got captured by the Danish army, held for ransom. They were strategic, they were not intended to be harmed, it was supposed to be a blackmail thing. And the King Gustav, who would grow up to be a king, he happened to escape. He somehow escaped, which was a big deal because now the Danish army just lost their biggest bargaining chip. They were like, King's son is missing, like that was like the whole point. And then obviously, he's the king's son of a foreign army, so a lot of people have their eyes like looking for him. Somehow manages by foot to get back from Denmark all the way back to Sweden. That's crossing an ocean or a sea. So does this all in disguise, does it in foot. But what happens is because he saw on foot so much of the Danish army, particularly the Christian army, when he got back to Sweden, he was like, I don't think Sweden as a Viking country will stand. I think our Viking days are numbered. And a lot of people don't like that, right? Because these are Vikings who are to die for the land, right? They're like, what are you talking about? And he was like, it's not going to work. I don't think that the Danish army is going to relax until we're Christianized. And even if we manage to defeat the Danes, Vatican's going to just send reinforcements. I mean, that's the thing about having the Catholic on your arms. So he's like, okay. And anyway, long story short, his dad and a couple of other nobles, there was some, not Trojan horse type thing, but anyway, it was a massacre. The Danes came to eat with his dad and a couple other Swedish nobles in Sweden and killed Swedish nobles. And after that, he took on being king. And that's when he started to talk about, like, we need to, if we fight, if the Swedish Vikings fight the Danish army, the Danish Christians, we'll get slaughtered. There will be no Swede left to claim Sweden. There will be no Viking left. The best course of action is to see if we can, quote unquote, convert to Catholicism if, on the agreement that they don't invade. And a lot of people are upset about that. Understandably, he'd say, I mean, he was right. They just completely dwarfed him. Technology, money, horses, ammunition, all of it. The Vikings are tough, but you just can't beat one. So, but this stone, what does it have to do with anything? But these Vikings were like, well, the heck with you, we're going to fight them. And eventually they did. These Radvik, Dalarna County Vikings, something like 250 or so Viking farmers took on the Danish, a singular unit, and defeated them. And it did give them a lot of rallying. A lot of people were like, well, see, the Radvik, Dalarna people did it, like, we can do it. But it also, even though they won, it also showed them what they were up against. And it was like very humbling. So that's when they started to re-strategize. That's when they start looking at Sweden going Catholic. Didn't really last that long though, because Lutheran, Martin Luther came by and was like, come on, you don't have to do that, join me. So that's how their story is going. We'll talk about that more later, but just their culture, I have, and in fact I should pass this around. This was the diner. Oh my God, I thought I was hallucinating. I thought I was still sleep deprived. So again, they loved American culture because of this time. They had an American 45, I don't know why it's called the 45-50s diner. But they had milkshakes and burgers and french fries. And again, I was like, this isn't real. And And then around town, American Girls Club, American Sports Camp. Like, these are people, and it was really cool because I travel I travel internationally quite a bit in the last few years especially. People don't love America. So it was really nice to be like, yeah, see? Look at this. They even have classic cars. They have the Delarna County American Classic Cars show. And you would see these classic cars everywhere. So I did bring back some classic car show pamphlets for some Great Falls folks that I knew would appreciate it. But it was just really nice to be reminded what good and awesome influences America can have. This is the library. This is just for Sarah. Literally this.
Thanks, Lee.
This is their library. Super cute. Single story. And then with a few side rooms for meetings. I think maybe a larger room for something like this. And the Darla horses. Let's pass them around. And then I'll pass around the caribou too. I forgot about that. No one's hands are like meatball-y, right? So this is a really cool. I'm gonna start this. That blue one, the big blue one, was my grandfather's Fafa, meaning Swedish, meaning father's father. He died a year after I was born. That was the only gift I ever got from him. And so that's what I was chasing when I got there. So you're like, okay, like it's just like a wooden horse, what's so special? So the Dala horse or Dalarna horse, this goes back several hundred years. Folks would go out and do timber and logging, like I said, and sitting around by the fire on those long contracts, those long terms, they'd sit there and whittle for their daughters or for their kids. And it became a cultural thing. They'd bring these little dolls back, these horses, or chickens, if you want, back for their kids, their community. And over time, it developed its own lore, its own mythology, and now every village in the county has their own horse as a mascot. And where I am, this particular, I don't even know what I did with the little thing. This man his family and bloodline has been the one carving the horses. It's like since the 1800s. And he does it for all the villages. He even does these massive, like, town centerpieces that are just big wooden horses, but they all have different colors or different designs. And whatever the gray one is, that one was Radvik. But yeah, here it is. But it's just cool. I mean, like, it's like even their high schools use it. It's cultural for them. So this is Uppsala. This is their sort of quote-unquote college town. There are universities in Stockholm and around. But Uppsala is just kind of like where it is old and it's Viking, but it's also like young and college, and there's a lot of water. And as you see, like this is true for a lot of Europe and especially Sweden. But your parking garages are over there, and then all of this is walkable. So lots of walking, lots of pedestrian. Again, right on the water, very few things, how do I want to say this? I don't know if it was something legal or just cultural, but they don't have a ton of private businesses that take up waterfront properties. It's either going to be diners, eateries. You can have some private homes and things like that, but this sort of emphasis that like the people own the water. This is like for the river walk, and you're like, this is for us. You don't just get to take the best because you have the money. So it's cool that I got to see all that. This is not just like a hill that I thought I wanted you guys to look at. This is a burial mound. Burial mound as some royal Swedish Vikings. They also found instances of child and woman sacrifices for some of these royal kings and Vikings. Nearby, if you get a very good video, is Uppsala University, but also Carl Linnaeus. He is considered the father of zoology. He's the one that has named our plants and animals and the system that we work with. Unfortunately, also use that same rhetoric to argue for scientifically backed racial discrimination. Real big on white intellectual superiority that really impacted early 1900s stuff too. 1800s, 1900s. All right, so here's Uppsala Cathedral. Let's talk about Sweden's religion. As I said, they were Vikings until it was clear that the Christian army was rich, and so they converted. Then they went from Catholic to Lutheran prominently. Now, it's still super secularized. They have these beautiful churches, but since 1951, there's been no official religion. They went totally freedom, secular, even though, like, if someone had to say it, they would tell you that they were Lutheran. I think a lot of people, it's just kind of like culturally Lutheran, culturally Christian, meaning that they probably go to holiday services, or if they need to explain something spiritual or religious, they're going to use Christian language. But insofar as anything beyond that, not really. They have sort of this attitude of belonging without believing, and that's kind of how it makes it work, I suppose. And then, yeah, one of the least religious countries, but certainly one of the highest instances of social welfare and reports of citizen happiness. So, but also I thought was interesting, like they all just beautiful. I appreciate it. Have all of these stories. They even have these side rooms. I feel like I need to be quiet. But they have these side rooms which are also burial, but they have like politicians buried in them, right? Because for Europe, religion and the state were one. So when you look at history, it's a lot of politicians and political stories in a church, which is unnerving probably to a lot of American Christians. All right, a lot of reindeer, a lot of caribou. Back when they passed this around, this was from the Sami indigenous site, or cultural people. As long as your hands aren't meatballing. And you guys, it's thick, soft, and but like I said, that's the base for a lot of their livelihood, particularly as you leave stock. Here's some caribou, so Swedish meatballs. So here's a pastry and some pizza, but everything else was reindeer. Reindeer, whether it was chopped up and put into a wrap with some cream, whether it was just a patty and potatoes and lingonberry, or whatever. So, and that's it.
Taste.
Yeah, it was not. It was a little bit better than venison, but probably just because they're a bit fattier. But it's still that way. But it was good. I mean, it was like a little chewy, a little thick, but totally.
Why didn't you like the McDonald's?
Oh yeah, thanks for that. So there's like this whole thing that McDonald's is supposed to be universal around the world. That's not true. For whatever reason, Domino's is though.
Not in the UK.
No,
Domino's is
terrible.
nasty.
It's in the UK. Yeah, they and it has to be. I mean, they didn't have salt on anything. They gave me a soda with no ice. But no, it was really, there was no salt, just the different ingredients. And they also don't really, they have fast food, it's like an option. But there's just so many other restaurants that you could eat. So it was, they just don't care about McDonald's. I was definitely the American. I was like, where's McDonald's? So here's just a day, a morning, drinking some coffee, eating my pastry. I don't know what's going on with that arrow.
It's the mouse.
Yeah, it's the mouse on the left.
Oh, okay. And then here's me trying Swedish meatballs.
They look the same.
I think yours were better.
Oh, thank you.
They look a lot bigger, I think.
Here's a,
Yeah, I'm gonna do that one.
were they made with reindeer?
I'm sorry?
Were those Swedish meatballs made with reindeer? Was it proud of reindeer?
They might have been those ones, these were at a restaurant. But I'm sure the reindeer patty I had at the Sami were, maybe it's from that guy. And then, speaking of, here's me eating the patty for the first time with the Sami people watching me, no pressure. Wear a sweater. But yeah, let's talk about their politics. I hear this all the time. I hear often, well, I didn't know this until I got there. They have one of the strictest immigration policies in the EU, if not the world. They don't have birthright. Just because you're born there doesn't mean anything. It does, you have to have a parent with Swedish blood. They are not socialists. A lot of people are like, oh, they're socialists. They haven't been socialists since the 70s, 80s. They tried to go that route and kicked out a lot of their major corporations. It devastated their workforce and devastated their economy. I think IKEA left for like Switzerland or something like that. Plummeted. Nobody had a job. I mean, it was bad. So like, okay, well, y'all come back. We need that. But we'll just redress, we'll change how we do things. So the middle class takes on the brunt of taxation, and they don't have a minimum wage. Super interesting. They don't have a minimum wage. They don't have a lot of regulation. The only thing, because they have this cradle to coffin system that they came up with, a lot of it has to do with the strict immigration policy. Right? When you control like who's coming in and out, and that immigration policy is for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're French, German, coming from somewhere else. Like they don't want outsiders. They, like I said, they'd rather just be up north, leave us alone, let us just take care of our own community. And so, not everything is socialized, but it is the default. If you want to pay more for private medical or private education, you can do that. And then, what else? But then also, because they're having very little immigration or very little change, it is a monoculture. Very, very little diversity. Like it almost felt like the Midwest or something. It was just like very mild-mannered. Nobody rocked any boats. Like there weren't either like individual personalities. It was just everyone was the same and went to work and then did the same thing. But again, like I said, 99.9% of the global population lives below you. So you don't want to mess with other. You're just doing whatever you want, except for tourism and trade. So if there was like an element that it felt like it was so far removed from everything, it felt like Montana. And it was just like, oh, speaking of mild-mannered, that's their protest. They are very upset. Even like the police van, like leading it and everything. And then this is what their quote-unquote poverty or lower economic class or even temporary labor housing might look like. So tiny homes, essentially. But again, poverty, right? I mean, if that's what poverty is, that everybody has a tiny home, that's what it looks like. So that year, 2024, I intentionally was not watching American U.S. politics while I was over there. And it didn't matter because my American accent outed me. Like when I went to the coffee shop, when I would ask someone if this bus was going which direction. In fact, an old lady like spat towards me. I'm not on, but she was like, American. And then talking about like get your country in order. This is affecting us, blah blah blah. And in fact, this man was on the train. I ordered something from the train car attendant, by the way. All 18 hours of Swedish train experience was led and staffed by all women. So, all women train service. I didn't do that, I wasn't intentional. Or even like, that's just, we're workforce. But I'm on this train, I'm talking to the lady after I got a drink, and like, oh, you're American. Right. you're gonna get us into a war, you're gonna get us all killed, we had nothing to do with this, and I just tell them, like, listen, I didn't spend all this money and time just to talk about my country, and your country is beautiful. I'm sorry to hear that you're so upset with our politics. If it's any consolation, there's a lot of in America that are upset about our politics. But thank you. I know, sorry to hear that you're upset. And then he goes on to say that he was from Radvik, that farm village area that took in all those World War II people. He was like, my family took in American soldiers. Right? We fed you guys, we housed you, and y'all are gonna drag us into a war. And well, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm not trying to fight with you, man. And we're not even fighting, I'm just like not trying to do it. And finally I was like, man, I served in the United States Air Force, I'm a veteran. Thank you so much for what you did for my fellow American soldiers. Those would likely be the grandparents and great-grandparents of my friends now. So thank you for what you did for them. And whatever happens in the future, may the United States and Sweden have good relations. And I calmed him down. And he kind of went off about Ukraine for a little bit. Yeah, Ukraine and Russia and everything. And then I wound up kind of like, I was like, well, the one thing we can agree on is F Russia. And he was like, yeah! Okay.
USA.
Suddenly it's the Disney miracle. But it did, it just went to show, hey, I did tell a few people, I was like, I have one vote. Look at me. Right? I am eating, I'm eating grapes from the gas station and staying in hostels and floating yurts. Like, I do not have the power to change the problems that you're talking about. Just let me have my wooden horse. But yeah, here's navigating a foreign language, especially when someone was like, yeah, just go to Julius Caesar's Lodge. You're like, what? And it's way. It just means street, road.
Julius Caesar's right.
Delicious.
And then you've got, just again, randomly in Sweden, we've got Oklahoma fried onion burgers leading the menu. So, Blaine, are you excited? Would you like to?
Hell yeah. The Oklahoma fried onion burger was originated in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl because they didn't have enough meat to go around, so they would cook the onions first and then smash the meat into it to make it go. I'm also from Oklahoma.
Represent.
Stockholm was fine because it's an international city, it's business, there's a lot of English there. But once I left Stockholm, it got, I don't know if you can see it from here, but it got mentally exhausting for me to navigate. And so there were at least 1 or 2 nights where I just got a pizza. And I was like, I'm not even dealing with trying to read a menu. Just give me your largest pizza, I'll make it work. That is also a little travel hack if you've got kids or maybe you're a picky eater. How I have tried new foods while abroad is by getting a pizza and then having that food put on the pizza. That way if I don't like it, you just take it off. Still got pizza. And that just works. One time I was in Zambia and we got Mopani caterpillar pizza. And I was like, I'll try it. Now it's pizza. And then finally, this is just a little video of all the trains for my train folks. Woo! Woo! Oh, there's no sound. But yeah, this was, it was super easy, super safe. And the people were very, the safety was kind of the biggest thing. And why I encourage other folks to do it. I saw a lot of female shoulder travelers. Well, Vision, what you right here? And think about causing mayhem. I know they were like, come get up here. And I was like, oh, that's my button. Did it restart? Oh, that's it. But yeah, this fall in red.
Yay!
Do y'all have any questions, or is there anything I can answer for you?
When did you start traveling? When did you decide it's something you want to do?
Okay, so this is super funny. I wanted to go to Sweden forever, my last name. My younger cousin went and moved to London like a few years ago to go to graduate school. And she wanted me to come visit her. And long story short, we wound up getting Taylor Swift tickets to Scotland. So that's how it brought me over there. And then from there I was like, okay, I'm going to Sweden. And anyway, in fact, there was at one point, I was just going to do the Taylor Swift show and then go straight to Sweden. And my cousin said, it's kind of rude to Scotland, isn't it? But yeah, really, just as far as travel is concerned, my mom worked in women's health and did some, not necessarily too much travel, but we did mission work, or we did some sort of women's healthcare related work through that. And then along the way, I wound up majoring in international relations in college, and just loved it, loved the travel. Don't necessarily like or care for, not that I have the option, but like resort or just like very custom, which is why I wanted to get off the beaten path, go to Sweden. But I love like telling you all about it, and then the vice versa. I love coming to Armchair Travelers. I think that's such a cool thing that Great Falls has. And because, I mean, I'm sure y'all are just learned a lot about Sweden that you wouldn't have known. And so, yeah.
Any other questions?
Why is Stockholm on these little islands? Wouldn't it be more sense to be on the mainland, or?
Yeah, so a couple of different reasons. Just being on those islands were good, strategic for going out to the Baltic Sea, especially with any of that. Let's see if I have a map. And strategic for Denmark, then the other way. And, but yeah, it is an interesting, just kind of a merge, like why islands go to the farmland.
Would have been for protection for some reason, like you could guard yourself better on an island?
Probably good, something
Be more
like
vulnerable too on an island.
yeah. But it's like, I had a really, this is sort of related, but America's wildlife laws and the way we have national parks are completely different than what Europe has. And Europe has now changed because of American national parks. But it used to be in Europe that all wildlife and land belonged to the king. And so like, you had to have special permits, or there had to be all these special things. You couldn't just like go out into a forest and hunt. And so that was kind of part of it too. There was a whole island dedicated to the king's garden. And that's where just he could have his own special place. But just weird things, man. You realize, like, you know, whatever issues that I tend to have sometimes with the United States, I'm like, wow, like, and that was against something else. You know what I mean? Like, so anyway, anyone? Yeah.
I can't think of the author's name, but the whole series of books of the girl with the tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
So there's quite a bit of violence and gangs and bad stuff happening in those, but not where anything you heard about.
No, I mean, there's certainly like violence and gangs and drugs. A big thing that mitigates it is a lot of the social welfare. Like it's just going to naturally like capture that. But absolutely, I mean, on the other side of things like that is that it can be hard to make money and grow wealth. And if you want to go into the illicit stuff, that region is prime for it. I also, speaking of, heard whispers and rumors about like illicit Turkish slave trade, like out of Sweden, especially up north where no one really monitors or anything. So definitely stuff happens. I just don't think it's as widespread because a lot of people don't have to resort to crime for things.
Do you have plans for a next trip?
Yes, I am going for a week in June to the Philippines to go do some, there was a natural disaster, some climate change work out there. But mainly I'm just here in Great Falls, trying to focus on Great Falls for a minute. I'll think of something. I know that I really have been wanting to travel either around Montana, around Pacific Northwest, just giving talks like this. So maybe that's an option this summer. But last year, this doesn't happen. But in 1 year, I went to Scotland and Sweden, then went to the border of Mexico with a group of pastors, and then went to Pakistan for 2 months. And I was that was a lot of culture, and we're just gonna stay here and help our community for a while. I think. But yeah, and if you guys ever want to travel together, it's all good.
A field trip, Sarah?
Field trip? Yeah. Maybe that's how we can start up next year. To Calgary, that would be the easiest.
We're international.
Did you have this all planned out ahead of time, or did you book your Airbnb on the way and train tickets?
I knew Slagness had to be booked ahead of time because it was indigenous, and Stockholm I did just because of airplanes. But like Ostersund was a recommendation, and Ratvik was a recommendation, like from other people. And,
Once you were there?
yeah, once I was there. But I knew, I mean, I knew that Sweden was safe and you could do this. But yeah, I knew that Inlandsbanen or whatever it's called, like it's for this. I mean, tourism to the Northern Lights in Lapland is like kind of a thing now. So I knew that I would have multiple stops along this route. I just didn't know what they were gonna look like and how long or whatever. So you all wanna go to Sweden?
Oh, yeah. Selfies, of course. Sit down.
That was hard.
Oh, yeah.
Yay! All right, so as always, thank you all so much for being here today. I am so happy to have you all here. Just a quick reminder, we have a few things coming up. Next Tuesday, we are going to be doing a Love Your Library party. It's also our welcome party for our new director, Amy, so come on out for that. We have desserts from a whole bunch of different bakeries in town. And then while we're also doing that, because, you know, everything I do has to have an extra level at it, we're also going to be doing, we're going to be baking cookies on the Charlie cart. So that's super exciting. And then we're also debuting a special holiday story time in memory of Debbie Coons. So if you guys want to come out for that, or if you have kids or grandkids or whatever it may be, or yourself, right? We're all kids on the inside. Come on out for that. We'll be doing 2 special story time readings at 5:30 and at 6 p.m. in the kids' place. And again, we'll have fresh baked cookies to go along with that because Debbie liked to make cookies for her families and then read books to the kids. So, but then we also have Stories from the River next Thursday with Dr. Kurt Fausch. He will be Zooming in because he actually lives in Colorado and we don't have that budget, so, you know. But he'll be Zooming in and he'll be talking about his book, A Reverence for Rivers, and about how river ecology has changed over the years and how we can work with the rivers and with the wild places to change in a better and more scientifically structured way. He says it a lot better because he's really good at this, but come on out for that as well. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next